Porto is Portugal's second largest city, situated on the banks of the Douro River in the north of the country. Its historic centre has been a UNESCO World Heritage Site since 1996 and is one of the oldest settled areas in Europe, dating back to when it was a Roman outpost in the 2nd century BC. Porto is now one of Europe's top city break destinations, thanks in part to it receiving multiple Best Destination in Europe awards over the past decade and hosts millions of tourists every year. Boasting a temperate climate, beautiful architectural styles, a delicious cuisine, and of course an abundance of port wine, it's not hard to see why this city has become so popular in recent years. So we decided it was time to jump on the bandwagon and spend a long weekend in the city to see what all the fuss was about. If you're new here, we're Kitty and John and we love to travel and experience new cultures. Whether we're exploring a country's cities or escaping into its natural regions, our passion for travel and experiencing new places never seems to fade. After many years spent discovering the wonders of South and Central America, we're back in Europe and are excited to explore a little more of our home continent. So if you'd like to see more from our European adventures, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so that you never miss another video.
We spent 3 full days in Porto, plus an additional half a day on our arrival day, which turned out to be pretty lucky as the weather was pretty miserable for about a day and a half of our stay. We managed to fit in some indoor activities during this time, but the majority of the outdoor locations and viewpoints you'll see in this video, we managed to cram into about 2 full days. Our accommodation was based just outside of the historic centre of the city and was really conveniently located as we could walk to pretty much anywhere we wanted to, and the hotel was also directly on a bus line right to the airport. We didn't really need to use public transport outside of getting to and from the airport, but if you did want to use public transport in the city, you access it through an Adante card, which you have to buy upon arrival into the city at any metro station, and then you just top it up with however much money you think you'll need. Everything is connected through the same card, so it's super easy. Our itinerary was a little bit disjointed because of the bad weather we experienced, so instead of doing sort of a day-by-day itinerary like we'd usually do, we've split this video up into the various districts of Porto so that we can show you all of the best places, viewpoints, and activities to do within each of those separately.
We'll start by talking about Porto's downtown area, which for the purpose of this video will include everything we did and visited north of the São Bento train station. Beginning on the western side of the city centre, in the Boião district, an absolute must-visit landmark is the Chapel of Santa Catarina, otherwise known as the Chapel of Souls. This small chapel is one of, if not the best, displays of blue and white tiles that can be seen on buildings all across the city. These types of tiles have a long history dating back to the 13th century, with the particular blue and white style being introduced into Portugal in the 17th century. The Chapel of Souls exterior is currently covered with almost 16,000 of these blue and white tiles, which represent the lives of Saint Francis of Assisi and Saint Catherine. The detail is incredible and makes this chapel, at least in our opinion, one of the most beautiful buildings in the city. Just around the corner from the Chapel of Souls, we came across the Mercado do Boião, where you can find vendors selling every kind of product, from fresh fruit and vegetables to meats and cheeses, as well as souvenirs and local products. The market is located inside a huge neoclassical building, and the spaces between the stalls even have their own street names. We headed straight down Santa Catarina Street, passing the well-known Majestic Cafe along the way, a good place to go if you want an expensive coffee and pastel de nata. At the end of the street, we came to another of Porto's blue tile churches, the Church of Saint Ildefonso. While certainly not as striking as the Chapel of Souls, it has a beautiful tiled front facade comprising around 11,000 tiles depicting the life of Saint Ildefonso. From here, we also got a great view across towards the Clérigos district, where we'll be heading next.
As well as its blue and white tiles, Portugal is also famous for pastel de nata, a traditional custard tart with a flaky puff pastry shell. They were created by Catholic monks in Lisbon before the 18th century and have since grown into one of the country's most popular national dishes. Every cafe we came across in Porto had pastel de nata lining the window displays where, if we were lucky, we could also watch them being made. On our way around the city, we'll also briefly mention all of our recommendations for sampling this delicious Portuguese delicacy. Close to the Mercado de Bolhom, you'll find the popular Confeitaria de Bolhom, and then on the way across to the Clerigos district, we stopped at Natas de Ouro, where we could get a delicious 6-pack of sweet pastel de natas, all with different flavours. We passed across the huge Liberty Square with Porto City Hall at its north end, before arriving at Clerigos Church. This church has a Baroque-style facade at the front, but its most prominent feature is its 75-metre tall bell tower at the rear, which can be seen from many parts of the city and can be climbed for a small fee to get great views across Porto. Just north of Clerigos Church is the Lelo Library, another extremely popular destination in Porto. Inaugurated in its current building since 1906, the Lelo Library has been talked about as being the most beautiful bookstore in the world. We visited on our rainy day in the city at about 5:30 p.m. and seemed to have the same idea as half the tourists in Porto, as it was extremely busy inside. Despite this, the gorgeous interior of the building, dominated by its sweeping staircase in the centre, is certainly up there with some of the prettiest bookstores we've visited on our travels. They stock books in many different languages and have a unique ticketing system where the cost of your entry ticket to the library is entirely deductible against the purchase of books, meaning you can pick up some cool mementos from your visit. We'd definitely recommend coming during the very first or the very last slot of the day though, so you can enjoy the library with as few people as possible and really experience it at its best.
Just west of the library, you'll find what was probably our second favourite church in Porto, the Carmel Church. Built in the second half of the 18th century in the Baroque style, the Carmel Church has another beautiful display of blue and white tiles, showing scenes representing the foundation of the Carmelite order and Mount Carmel. For a small fee, you can also go inside the church to explore its many different rooms, catacombs and rooftop. Just off the nearby Carlos Alberto Square, we stopped in at the Confeitaria Alianca for another delicious pastel de nata and coffee, and then on one of our rainy days in the city, we visited the Soares dos Reis National Museum, an art museum located in an 18th century palace. Inside, we found many examples of Portuguese art and sculpture, including 10 items considered as national treasures within Portugal. This is not typically the kind of museum we would frequent, but if you enjoy classical art or just want something to do on a rainy day like we did, then you could do worse than wander around in this museum for an hour or two. Our last stop in this section of our guide are the Crystal Palace Gardens, which are just a short walk from the Soares dos Reis Museum. The gardens themselves are really beautiful and peaceful to walk around, but the main draw for us were definitely the incredible views we got over Porto, Gaia and the Douro River. The best time to come, in our opinion, is the golden hour in the evening. Have a wander around the different areas of the garden and make sure to check out the small tower hidden away at the south end of the park. Then sit back to enjoy a gorgeous sunset over the Douro River.
The second area we'll cover in this guide is the historic or Ribeira area, which for the purposes of this video will be everything between the São Bento train station and the Douro River on the Porto side of the city. This area is packed with beautiful old buildings and an abundance of fantastic viewpoints, and is connected by a patchwork of tiny alleys and steep staircases to lose yourself in. We'll go from east to west along the river, but you can of course visit these places in any order that you like. Along Passeio das Fontanhas, we got some lovely views across the red-tiled roofs of nearby buildings towards Gaia and the Louis I Bridge. We continued to get fantastic views as we walked down a steep street to Avenida Gustavo Eiffel, the main route along the Douro River. When walking along here, you'll get a good look at the famous Louis I Bridge, and then, just before you reach it, make sure to cut up the Escadas dos Guindais. This steep staircase winds back up the hill, but you'll get some great views of the river, bridge, and city as you climb, as well as some beautiful murals and colourful houses. Another, less strenuous option for getting up and down the hill is the funicular dos Guindais, which conveniently lets you avoid the steep staircases you'd otherwise have to traverse. We ended up coming back down the Escadas do Corezal, which brought us down on the opposite side of the Louis I Bridge and past some more blue and white tiled houses, and gave us great views of the bridge and out towards Gaia on the other side of the river. Having been all around the Louis I Bridge, getting great views of it from both sides, let's talk about the bridge itself. Probably Porto's most famous and recognizable bridge, the Louis I Bridge spans the Douro River, connecting Porto on one side with the city of Vila Nova de Gaia on the other. There are 2 levels to the bridge, with road traffic crossing the lower level and pedestrians and the metro crossing the upper. We walked across this bridge many times during our stay in the city, and we suggest taking your time as you cross, because from the upper level you get some of the best views of Porto on one side and Gaia on the other. Just make sure to keep an eye out for the trams, as they do pass pretty close to the sides.
If you follow the road back towards the downtown area of Porto from the bridge, you will eventually come to the São Bento train station. A train station wouldn't usually be on our list of best places to visit in a city, but the São Bento station has a beautiful display of blue and white tiles adorning the walls of its atrium. There are over 20,000 tiles covering the walls of the station, which depict various moments and scenes from Portugal's history across its different regions. It was definitely one of the best examples of these tiles we saw around the city, so we highly recommend going to check them out even if you're not trying to catch a train. Just outside the station, there are a mass of small cafes and bakeries where you can get a tasty pastel de nata. We had one at Fábrica de Nata, and it was certainly one of, if not the best, pastel de nata we had whilst in Porto. From here, you can head straight down to the pedestrianised Flores Street, where if you keep an eye out, you will spot a beautiful mural of a cat covering the entire side of one of the buildings. A quick detour off Flores Street onto Ferraz Street will also give you great views of Porto Cathedral in the background, which looks good both during the day and when it's all lit up at night. Speaking of Porto Cathedral, that's where we'll head next. After arriving on the large terrace in front of the cathedral, you'll get a good look at one of Porto's oldest buildings, with construction of the current building dating back to the second half of the 12th century. You can visit the cathedral for a small fee, which we think is well worth the price of admission. The interior rooms of the cathedral are beautifully ornate, and the Gothic cloisters are surrounded by blue and white tiled murals depicting scenes from the Song of Songs. You can also head up to the top of one of the cathedral's towers for amazing panoramic views of the city. Once you're done admiring the cathedral, head just below the terrace to the viewpoint at Alda Street. Here we got a really unique view of the city with St. Lawrence Church in the foreground. If you head down the stairs to the base of the church, you can also get to another great viewpoint along the side facing the river. Be sure to quickly dock into Lago da Pena Ventosa from here, as this little plaza is really quaint and colourful.
In the area around the cathedral on Benharia Street, there's a small art store called Domus Arte. If you've been enjoying the beautiful tiled facades of the buildings around Porto and want to have a go at creating your own tile, they have regular tile painting workshops here. This was the perfect activity for us on one of our rainy afternoons. The process is super easy, as you use sketching paper to sketch the pattern you like onto a blank tile, and then it's just a matter of painting the various sections in whatever colours take your fancy. We got a free glass of port and snacks whilst we worked, and got to take home a unique souvenir at the end of our trip. From the area around the cathedral, it's super easy to get back down to the waterfront. You'll probably end up in Ribeira Square, with its colourful buildings and many cafes and restaurants. From here you can walk up and down the river, stopping in at one of the cafes, watching the boats as they cruise up the Douro, and enjoying the views over to Gaia on the far bank. A little back from the river, we arrived in Infante de Henrique Square, home of the Palacio da Bolsa, a 19th century palace which sports some stunning interiors. We didn't find the time to go in during our stay, but it's another one we'd recommend for a rainy day in the city. The penultimate ultimate stop in this historic region of the city is at the Miradouro da Vitória, which gives you a great overview of Porto back towards the cathedral and the Louis I Bridge. Our final suggestion for this area is the Portuguese Centre of Photography, a free museum housed inside an old prison. You'll get to see all sorts of antique cameras and photo exhibitions and actually get some great views of the city from some of the cell windows on the top floor.
Vila Nova da Gaia is located on the south banks of the Douro River and is most famous now for its many cellars, also known as caves, where port wine is stored and aged. The cellars of various different brands line the waterfront area of Gaia, where the wine brought from the Douro Valley is stored until it's ready to be bottled. Each winery offers their own tours and tastings, so there's plenty of choice when it comes to sampling Portugal's iconic wine. One of the more popular wineries is called Caves Calam, and they actually offer a tour, tasting and fado concert ticket in the evenings, which is the one we ended up booking. After a quick look through the museum, we were given a 30-minute tour of the cellar with information on the aging process, the different varieties of port wine and how they are stored differently. Then we were taken up to a room on the upper floor to watch the fado show whilst sipping on our 2 glasses of port. Fado is an expressive, melancholic Portuguese music genre often characterized by mournful tunes and lyrics about the sea or the life of the poor. The singer sings about the realities of daily life with either a sense of resignation or hope and is accompanied by guitarras and violas. Fado is usually performed in pubs and cafes for smaller audiences, and the performances given by the male and female vocalists were mesmerizing to watch.
Faz-nos chorar, quem ama tudo suporta, o resto não tem valor. Ando a pensar nostalgia, o tempo passa a passar, a moraria, cantam porfia, choram guitarra.
Make sure to take a stroll down the waterfront in Gaia, as you'll get great views over to the historic centre of Porto on the opposite bank of the river, and there are plenty of interesting buildings to check out as well. There's the fantastic world of Portuguese sardine and the Casa Portuguesa do Pastel de Bacalhau, where you can buy a codfish cake inside what looks like an old movie theatre and enjoy it whilst watching an organ show. Make sure to also get an ice cream from Amarino next door and enjoy it on the banks of the river. A little further up and off the main street, there's an interesting art exhibit on the corner of a building called Half Rabbit by Bordalo II. From close to here, you can take the Gaia cable car back up to the end of the Louis I Bridge. We chose not to save some pennies, but if you want to save your legs from the climb, it's a convenient way to get back up the hill. Before heading back up to the bridge though, the waterfront in Gaia is also dotted with plenty of docks where boats running the popular 6 Bridges cruise depart from. Cruises depart pretty much every half hour throughout the day, so it's easy to just rock up whenever you're ready and hop onto one. This cruise takes you up and down the Douro River over the course of an hour, giving you great views of the cities on either bank and taking you under the 6 main bridges that cross the Douro River in Porto. It's not overly expensive and gives you a different perspective of Porto, so we think it's definitely a must-do activity whilst you're in the city. After returning to the dock and disembarking, we headed back up the hill to the Jardim do Moro at the end of the Louis I Bridge. This is a beautiful little green space in Gaia, which gets very popular in the evenings when people gather to listen to music and watch the sunset over the city. For an even better view of the city at sunset though, we suggest heading up to the old monastery of St. Augustine, where there's a wide terrace with sweeping views over the city and the river below. It's the perfect place to just sit back and watch the world go by below you as you wait for the sun to set over Porto. Overall, we had a great time in Porto, despite the weather being a bit miserable for half the time that we were there. There were more than enough indoor activities and attractions to keep us entertained on the rainy days, and loads of beautiful landmarks and viewpoints to explore on the sunny days. It was very busy, even on a non-holiday weekend in March, but we can certainly see why it's become one of Europe's top city break destinations. Beautiful architecture and tiled facades everywhere you look, cafes selling delicious pastel de natas on every corner, and the chance to indulge in as many port wine tastings as your heart desires. I mean, what's not to love? If you don't mind the crowds, then Porto is definitely a city that we would suggest adding to your bucket list. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you back here on the next one.